switching gears a little bit, I think another reason you and I originally connected so well is we're both women of color. We both have Asian American backgrounds. How do you think about or connect your Asian American heritage to how you administer healthcare and support women's wellness?
Yeah, that's really, it's really fun for me. I really, I'm proud of my heritage for sure. Half Korean and half Persian. And, unfortunately, I don't have that many Asian parent patients because I live in Denver, Colorado, and it's just not that Asian diverse. But once in a while, I'll have an Asian patient. It'll be exciting. But I used to live in New York City. I had a lot more. But there is definitely, differences in our health and the way that we operate, especially from, checking my blood work, checking other Asian people's blood work over my career. And one of the things that we really need to pay attention to as Asians is blood sugar. This is a major problem for a lot of people, is managing your glycemic control. And it's a number of things. I think our genetics, put us at risk for whatever reason, Latin Americans as well, and African Americans, like we all kind of have higher risk of developing things like prediabetes and diabetes than Caucasians. So making sure to track, have your doctor look at fasting glucose, fasting insulin. That's a really important one. And hemoglobin A1C. Those are the main three markers that we use to track glycemic control. And a lot of times insulin level will get elevated before glucose even, like for fasting. And that's a sign of insulin resistance, meaning body's getting too many carbohydrates, too many sugars to be able to handle. And so insulin is just rising. And that insulin will cause all kinds of metabolic disturbances and weight gain, especially in the midsection. I mean, Asian people have a certain body type. They, are thin overall. They have thin limbs. They come off as being, I can eat anything and I don't gain weight. But you got to look under the hood, because even though you are eating all that rice and all those noodles, your glycemic control, that glycemic control is not good. And we will gain weight in our midsection. And unfortunately, that ends up being really inflammatory. That is called visceral fat. It's the fat that surrounds our organs. It's not necessarily like in the abdomen, like on top of your abs. It's like in your organs. It's like surrounding your organs in your abdomen. And that's incredibly inflammatory fat. And that messes with your glycemic control. So it's just important, for Asians to be aware of this, because it's not going to be the case in Caucasians. So if you're going to a Caucasian doctor and they don't really understand this, you're going to have a normal BMI because you are a thin person overall. But, what's your body composition? That is incredibly important to keep in mind as Asians. And then bringing it back to magnesium, another one of the functions of magnesium is actually glycemic control. So if you are deficient in magnesium, your glycemic control is going to be even harder. So that's really, really important.
I also learned something new there. That's really interesting. I mean, it's a good thing that you point out that Asians have that higher risk perhaps of diabetes or glycemic control. My grandfather was diabetic. He developed diabetes.
Mine too.
And he was so disciplined that he somehow managed to essentially manage his insulin levels and his glycemic index through diet and exercise. But it's definitely something to watch out for. So my family and I have definitely cut back on the rice and noodles for sure.
I know. I mean, it's like evolutionarily we ate those things, sure, but we were also like out farming and we weren't sitting at a desk all day. It's just, we have to realize that we're not living the lives of our ancestors. And so we have to try to, tone back on certain carbohydrates that we're so used to eating.
Is there any research you've seen that shows why people of Asian descent have that higher risk of?
I've looked into it a lot because it is really notable that, specifically myself, I've noticed myself like so incredibly sensitive to glucose and my hemoglobin A1C. Like I put myself into the pre-diabetic range when I went to Italy for a week and just gorged on bread and pasta, and it was amazing. But like that wouldn't happen to, I don't think, an Italian person, you know? So I don't know. I've tried to do research on that. I just don't think it's really been studied.
Yeah. Me too. I'm also very sensitive to like simple carbs. So whether it's breads or pastas or rices, I really have to pay attention to that. And one doctor I saw recommended, well, one, limit the amount of carbs that you eat from things like rice, bread, pasta. If you eat carbs, focus on complex carbs, right? And then the other thing he recommended, which I thought was really interesting, was eat protein first. So if you're going to have a meal with carbohydrates, eat the protein first and then the carbs. And that order of eating protein first and then carbs second helps your body, I guess, control your glycemic index more. And we did the monitoring, and it totally bore out in the data.
It really does work. I think there's a book called Glucose Revolution where she talks all about that too. And it basically slows the release of the carbohydrates into your bloodstream. If you have protein and or fat in your system as you're taking in those carbs, so it's not going to spike your glucose the way that it would if you didn't have that.
Yeah. I also love learning that having the right amount of magnesium in your body helps with maintaining the right glucose levels and reducing inflammation in your body, which, as we know, is good for you in general.